Hey, good morning, everyone. I'm Playbook co-author Rachael Bade. It's Wednesday, October 2nd, and what's driving the day is the first and the only vice presidential debate from last night. That matchup between Governor Tim Walz and Senator J.D. Vance. So, of course, I've got my co-author, Eugene Daniels, in the house. Hey, Eugene.
Hello, hello, hello. How is it already October 2nd? How is this possible
I
this
don't
year?
know. I got to get myself a Halloween costume, that's
I
for
don't,
sure.
people don't know this about Rachel, but she's obsessed with Halloween and
I do.
decorating for Halloween.
My house looks
Lots of
fabulous. I will
pumpkins,
say that. Lots of pumpkins and
lots
flowers.
of pumpkins.
Mums specifically. But just a note off the top here before we get down to business. We're recording just after the debate. It's been about 30 minutes,
Yeah,
Eugene, and
yeah.
we have a lot of thoughts. So I'm just going to start with this, Eugene. I got to say, I feel kind of like a dumbass because in all my TV hits leading up to this debate, I have been predicting that we're going to see some sort of heated and contentious debate, that it was going to be very ugly. I
Yeah.
mean, I've been thinking about, the history between Vance and Walz, Vance accusing Walz of, stolen valor, suggesting he lied about his military service and IVF treatments, this thing
Yeah.
about tampons in boys' restrooms.
Walls calling
And
him weird for
Exactly.
weeks and weeks.
Creepy,
Yeah, yeah,
weird, and even
yeah.
making that sort of sideswipe about that couch conspiracy
Right,
with JD Walls, right?
right, right,
Or with
right.
JD Vance. I mean, Walls
Yeah,
mentioned that.
yeah,
And yet this debate was surprisingly Midwest,
yeah.
almost friendly at time. And I hate to say it, Eugene, but it was boring. What was your take?
It was, I think you're right. I mean, part of it was that I think the anticipation of how they've been engaging publicly for so long set us all up for failure because you're not the only one who anticipated like a rumble, right? JD Vance is not like a teddy bear. So, teddy bear JD Vance on the debate stage was a little confusing, I think, for people. We thought if you're
You
looking
think you
at
know a
Tim,
guy.
you think you know someone to go out and screw you. For Tim Walz, he is a teddy bear, right? And so you would think he needed to seem tougher than he usually does. And then Vance had the opposite problem. But both of them kind of did. It was probably like the most Midwestern vice presidential debate in history, right? I think you kept hearing things like, I agree with him, like what he said, which is like a weird way to do a debate. But at the end of the day, I think like, Vance probably did better. He's better at these, right? It seems like the what we thought was spin, which was the Walls people being like, he's not good at debates. It was kind of true. This is not his forte, and that was very, very clear from the very beginning.
It's a great point because I did also take that as spin and lowering the bar, but clearly he was very uncomfortable. That
Yeah.
actually gets us right to where I want to go next, which is sort of handicapping the performance of both of these guys. I mean,
Yeah.
so start with Walls and his worst moment in your view,
Yeah.
Eugene.
I mean, I think his worst moment was his answer on Tiananmen Square about
Yeah.
whether or not he was there during that time. And one, the question was a little strange because I don't know that out of all the things that he's quote unquote misspoken on, that was the one that people care about the most. The fact that no one, including JD Vance, brought up his like stolen valor thing
Right.
was quite confusing.
Well, that was
Um,
recent. It was recent, right? Didn't that
yeah,
just come out, the Tiananmen Square thing? So maybe
it's
that's why they
newer, but like it's like who's the audience for that and what that would actually tell the American people about this man is not really very super clear. I think that was his worst moment just because he seems so awkward and uncomfortable. And more importantly, it's a question that you should anticipate, right? It's one of those things that like that people have written stories about it. If they're gonna, there's a few things that you've quote unquote misspoken on, so you have to figure out how to talk about it. And he didn't do that. So I think that was probably his worst moment of the entire night.
Yeah, Tim Alberto was tweeting that was political malpractice for him not to have an answer to that question, given how
So
many sort of
confusing.
headlines. Yeah, and I mean, to go back to your point about, his team lowering the bar and then clearly being serious about the fact that he wasn't a good debater. I mean, he was so nervous at the beginning. I mean, we're used to Walls coming out on stage at these rallies with this sort of like huge confidence and presence and just like warmth. On that those first questions about foreign policy, he stumbled, and he stumbled a lot actually. You
Yeah.
could just see he was so uncomfortable and clearly was not sure. Wanted to make sure he's getting the different countries right.
Right.
And then there was that moment when he accidentally said, what was it, that he had been friends with a school shooter or something like that. But he was
Right.
trying to say friends with victims of
Right.
school shootings.
Exactly.
But
Exactly.
anyway, best moments for Walz, would you say?
I think his best moments were when he was talking about reproductive access, right? This is something that he actually cares about. It's something where, if you're someone who wants more reproductive access, he's done more on that, right? They described him as one of the least restrictive states on abortion in the country. Also, healthcare. When he talked about healthcare, I thought that was probably one of his best moments throughout. So those two were pretty good. And I think because both of those things are things that governors actually have some control over in their state, right? It's things that they actually care about. He was in Congress when the ACA was being discussed and passed. So he has that background. Those ended up being his best moments.
Yeah, I thought he was pretty strong on the guns too. I mean,
Yeah, guns
emphasizing
too.
again, I'm
Yes.
a hunter, I'm a gun owner, and yet that moment of meeting with the families from Sandy Hook
And his
was like
own son's
changing. And
personal.
yes,
Yes.
that which was that out there, Eugene? That this
It's not
fact that
something, if it wasn't something that he talked about a lot. It's definitely felt new. I guess that maybe that he hadn't talked about it on a stage like this, obviously.
and for viewers who or listeners who are just hearing us summarize this but didn't watch the debate, we're referring to this moment where Walz talked about his son viewing a shooting when he was 17 years old
Yeah,
in a
yeah.
community center and how it sort of screwed him up. So yeah, I agree. Those moments were good for him. What about Vance? Best moments for Vance, would you say?
I think it's Vance was kind of smooth throughout, right? I think one of the
Smooth is a good
things,
word.
right,
Yeah.
like throughout the debate, it was clear that this is something he knows how to do,
Oh my
right?
God, I
This
wrote
is
smooth in
this
my
was
notes right here.
boom, mind meld,
Yep, my
playbook
mouth.
mind meld. But he just felt like that the entire time, and partly because just to go back to Walls really quickly, but I promise it answers the question. Walls kept saying, like, I agree with him. He kept being too nice. And why would I vote for you when you're telling me the other guy might be right? Like, I'll just vote for the other guy, right? And I think Vance benefited from a lot of what Walls had, which is his unsureness. I think Vance's best moments were just like him feeling more human. The attacks and critiques on him for months at this point have been that he's kind of a robot, he's awkward, he doesn't know how to be human. But like when Wall said that his son, the thing about his son, he had Vance had like a very human reaction to that and said, I'm so sorry that that happened to you, like that's terrible. I think he said Christ Almighty at one point. So there's like you got to see a completely different side to Vance, which I think he could have used it. And I think he if you're talking about someone that prepped for this, he prepped to be seen as like the best night for him, that since he's become a running mate for Trump.
Yeah, the softer side of Vance. That was
Yeah,
actually the same moment I picked out was when he reacted to Walls disclosing
yeah,
about his son
yeah.
had seen the shooting. I also think that Vance delivered the type of debate performance that Republicans desperately wanted Donald Trump to deliver. I mean,
Yes,
he was very
yes,
policy focused,
yes.
not going after him for his military service, no mention of quote tampon Tim. I mean, it's just no mention of politicizing, hurricane relief, which is something that Donald Trump has accused Democrats of doing, just recently. Instead, he was saying that, he felt for and was thinking about the victims of the hurricane, not saying Harris and Biden were trying to sort of keep Republican areas from getting help. So it was just a very different type of politician than Donald Trump has shown that he is. And I'm confused why we haven't seen this Vance before.
Vance also, the thing that he did really well was tying Vice President Harris to Joe Biden, right? Like he did that in a way that Republicans really wanted Donald Trump to do. I think at his worst moment, I mean, the January 6th moment probably wasn't great, right? Like either he was asked straight up, like, did Donald Trump lose the election? And he just couldn't answer that, right? Um, and I think the thing that might bite him later is he kind of talked about that Americans don't trust us on abortion, talking about Republicans. That's something that Democrats have been saying for decades, and they have already been pouncing on that. It's a talking point probably to make him look more moderate on abortion, but the benefit to Democrats who are probably going to put that in ads, right, is higher than whatever he would end up getting. I thought that was it was a weird way to kind of describe it. It seemed like he wanted to humanize and kind of meet people where they are in abortion, but like that's not what the majority of folks who are pro-choice, that's not where they are. It's not that they feel like people don't trust them, it's that people feel like they're wrong. And
Yeah,
it was interesting and confusing.
yeah, and Walls just completely dunked on him and about, women's rights like right after that. So it kind of made the
Right.
whole attempt look kind of fruitless.
Exactly. Exactly.
For me, I think the worst moment for Vance was, him trying to sort of shame the moderators for the one fact check we saw in this, which was when he was trying to say the Springfield Haitian immigrants were here illegal. The moderator said, actually, no, that's not true. And
Right.
he said, what did he say, Eugene? It was like, I thought you're not supposed to fact check
Yeah,
me. Weren't you not supposed to fact
exactly,
check me?
exactly.
But like in saying that, it was like almost an implicit acknowledgement that he was lying.
Exactly. He's like, how dare
um,
you check my lie? Be
yeah,
quiet. Yeah,
yeah.
yeah. No, it was
So
an awkward moment.
totally awkward moment. So to just sort of wrap this up, our lead this morning in Playbook, and it's been said over and over on TV today, in the lead up to this debate, was rule number one of the vice presidential debate is do no harm.
Right.
Eugene, do you think that these candidates both sort of did that, cleared the bar? And who do you think actually won?
I think they both kind of cleared the do no harm bar. I
I
think
think so too.
like the Democrats I'm talking to, the Republicans I'm texting with, like no one feels like no one's like, oh my God, he killed it, right? Our guy killed it. Walls folks and Democrats are like, you know what? It was fine.
He
He got
got
through
through it.
it.
Vote of
He
confidence.
finished. He did
Yeah.
90 minutes on the
It
debate
wasn't a
stage.
Biden
It
performance,
was not
okay?
a well,
Ooh,
girl. Oof,
sorry.
yeah, that's
Ooh.
tough. But and the same thing for Vance, right? People saying that like they thought he did well. He had some stumbles. They didn't expect a whole lot. But at the end of the day, like none of the debates move people, but like a vice presidential debate moves the least amount of human beings, right? This is an election where that has kind of been pretty steady for the most part. When it comes to like big events not having an impact, I think our Mike DeBona said this to us in our group chat, and I think that's true. Like big things have not shaken this debate. Winner, I think you have to give it to Vance. I think he just seemed more steady on his feet. He seemed like someone who was could debate. I also thought like Walz kept making a bunch of faces. Like Vance just said it seemed like he had like been sitting and ready and willing to do this for a really long time. And I think that's what people look for when they're like, who won a debate?
I agree with you. I think it was Vance.
Even if he lied sometimes.
I don't understand why he hasn't shown this side of him before.
Yeah.
And a lot of people talk about how much of a liability he's been to Trump, or that they think he's been to Trump, and that Trump should have chosen someone more temperament, more sort of mild mannered.
Yeah.
And it's just surprising that we haven't seen this part of Vance before. But I agree with you. Don't think it'll matter. I mean, polls showed that even though voters thought Kamala Harris totally crushed Trump in the first or in the presidential debate,
Yeah.
didn't affect anything. So
exactly. I mean, we've had an assassination attempt and not like a ton of
right.
like it's just like this election is just like the strangest election in history, and these big moments just aren't doing anything here.
Yeah, certainly not. And we're going to leave it there today. Thank you, Eugene. You can find more of this conversation by listening to Playbook Daily Briefing, wherever you get your podcasts. For more of our thoughts on the debate and what else you need to know today, make sure you read Playbook this morning at politico.com/playbook. And make sure you decorate your house for Halloween. I'm Rachael Bade, and thanks for listening.